Today's guest is Luis Ewing, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran turned public school teacher and the voice behind the podcast, The Problem with 10. In uniform, Luis stood watch for our country's security. In the classroom, he's watched our future slip through the cracks. He's seen firsthand how those who give the most, veterans, teachers, working families, are all too often the first to be forgotten. On The Problem With, Luis tackles the myths we've been sold, fair queen stereotype to the promise of bootstraps and broken schools, and connects them to the real lives they impact. He brings honesty, lived experience, and the courage to ask the questions most of us think but won't say out loud. Care about truth, justice, and building a society that fights for each other instead of falling for the same old lies. You're in the right place. So let's dig in. No filter, no spin. Please welcome Luis. Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's always great to have a fellow podcaster on.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about what brought you to the military. What was that deciding factor to make you go in the Marines?
So it was a lot of leading up to it, but so I was raised in a household that my dad was military. He was a Navy person. My granddad was also in service. I mean, it was a whole family history, and I was raised in the way that you were supposed to be service in some way. And I'm an immigrant coming from Colombia. Okay. So my way of saying my thank you to the country, that because I was having a great education, in my opinion, at that time, I was having the opportunity to do stuff that I wasn't able to do before. In a sense, I was saying, I need to do this. And also to prove to people that I can do the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marine Corps thinking that it was just something everybody at that time should be doing. Like, I think that was a good step to, and because I wasn't sure, was college the best thing for me to do or not? But I did it mainly as a return to the country. So of what at that time I believe was doing everything to give me a good opportunity to do everything, which it did. Now looking back, I've seen that there were some things that my views have changed a lot. So that's one step. I joined the Marine Corps.
Yeah. I'm not sure what year you came in, but I wasn't too far off from that. I got married right out of high school, came in 94, and I went in the Army. And I came in because I wasn't mature yet. I just got married. I just lost my job. I just got out of high school and I had no skills. And I needed a place to go that could help me grow up a little bit and give me those skills. And at that time, it was a 9-to-5 job. There was nothing going on. What's the worst thing going to happen? I got to mow some yards.
I joined in 2013. So kind of like Afghanistan, the war there, it was still kind of going, not as severe, but it's still going. So I remember I joined and my mom freaked out. And I mean, tears of like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing, but my dad at first was kind of against it, and then he goes, so he told my mom's like, Martha, we can't do anything about it. I think it's a good step. He's 18, come on.
Yep. I think I felt the same way. I didn't really want my kids coming in either, and I think that because by the time they had gotten to that age, I had already kind of seen what was really going on, and it wasn't what you see on Fox News. So You get out of the military, and did you go straight into, did you already have your degree to be a teacher, or did you have to go back to school when you got out?
I went back to school.
Okay.
So, so I decided after my 4 years, which honorable discharge, everything, I did my part. I was not happy with where the Marine Corps was it wasn't for me at the end of time. I did my time, and I did it honorably. I had great memories with friends, and I missed them a lot as well. But once I got out, I was like, okay, I'm going back. And I always wanted to do music as a teacher. I always wanted to do it. I thought going into the Marines, maybe that was a change of plans. Nope. Decided to go back to school to be a band director, a music educator. And I auditioned for 3 places. I'm originally lived in Kansas, so I, of course, had to go to audition for KU, University of Kansas. Then I auditioned for OU when USC, South Carolina. I got accepted to all. And then what made my decision was the passing of my dad due to cancer. And he was big fanatic of OU. So I thought OU would be the best option to kind of honor his memory. And at the end of the day, actually, it was the best decision. Love the school, love the people, and it made me realize a lot of things that I love.
Yeah. So, what grade are you teaching?
I teach mainly high school, but I've had taught sixth grade all the way to, actually, I've done fifth grade all the way to 12th grade. So this year's my fifth year officially teaching a high school, but overall I've been teaching for about 6 years,
Okay.
7 years. So it's been a minute.
Yeah, I did the band thing when I was in middle school, and I learned real quick I was not the band guy.
We lose a lot of kids. It's just that's how it is.
Well, my mom made me, pick an instrument, and I think had I picked a different instrument, maybe it'd been better. But I picked the clarinet. Man, I just couldn't get into it. Yeah, me and the teacher had a really good understanding. He would just ask me, "Do you want to try out, or you just want last chair?" And I'm good right here. Yeah.
And that's okay. We do see a lot of like band directors who are middle school or high school who are very, very like saying like, "Oh, if you quit now, you will always quit," which at the time kind of there's some truth to it. However, we do understand that kids are kids.
Yeah.
We
I
do.
mean, at that age, we don't know what we're doing. I mean, I ended up getting kicked out of it anyways because I got caught making out in a soundproof booth.
Oh, the amount of stories I heard about that. I was leaving my school, the one that I was before, and these kids thought that was time for confession time. And I was like, why are you telling me this right now? I was like, first of all, I locked these doors. How did you open them?
Yeah, and I didn't say anything. He caught us, and he assumed that I was the instigator in that situation, and because the other person was she was always first chair. I mean, she was
of course,
she was all about music, and I never said nothing because he would have definitely had a different opinion. But
that's funny.
Yeah,
my wife is also a band person. My wife and I were in band together. I don't know if you heard of it, but my wife and I were in band. She was the drum major. I was the drumline person, but we really didn't connect until like a year I was into the Marine Corps. We were like band marriage, but not really.
Yeah.
Band is an interesting way, but because I was very focused on that.
Yeah, it is one of those things that man, the people think that the band people are innocent, man. I'm going to tell you, they're not.
No. They are the biggest. And I'm not saying I wasn't like one of those, but we are one of the most wilder kids I ever met in my life. Like some of the stories I hear from some of my students that I can share.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm going to walk away before I start reporting you to your parents, which I always do. I'm like, did you know your kid did this? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. Good to know.
So let's get into a little bit about, obviously the podcast came from somewhere. All of us podcasters, we have something that we're passionate about and we just want to share it. How did yours start?
Well, it was a long project, actually. I wanted to originally start a podcast with a friend that was supposed to be just called a podcast about music. We're going to listen to a full album and then give our opinions about it. And we thought that'd be cool. Never worked out and everything. So then I had very strong opinions politically about veterans. And I was just tired of yelling to the void kind of thing. And also talking to my wife about this, and I don't want to bum her down anymore about this stuff. The other thing that came up is just, so I don't watch, I mean, I do now because of the podcast, but I also watch, like, I don't watch cable news as much, but I watch like what's going on YouTube, local news and everything.
Yep.
And I think the one that got me going with the podcast was News 9, my local Oklahoma City. They went and did a report about teacher pay. I was like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. The problem was that they did a report about teacher pay from New Jersey. New Jersey pay on average was $60,000 to $70,000, which was a very misleading thing because a lot of here in Oklahoma, we don't pay the teachers that much. Yeah. The starting salary on average for Oklahoma is $46,000 statewide. That's starting. And I think the highest pay is someone who gets paid $60,000. So when News 9 threw that story out there, I was like, oh, no, I can't. I started emailing. I started doing this. I said, hey, you guys did this wrong. This is not real. No response.
Yeah.
Then when did then I started doing I told my wife, like, there's a lot of issues, a lot of lies going on in this country that we believe in. One was about teachers get the summers off. I'm like, yeah, have you tried to deal with those hooligans for a whole year?
Yeah. I couldn't do it.
Or have you, or the other one that, oh, teachers get paid well. It's like, no, we don't get paid well. We don't. And also as an immigrant, especially with the Trump presidency again, coming up with his, what's the word I'm looking for? Rhetoric about immigration.
Yeah.
That was way too far. I mean, I was never a Republican. I was never, even in the military, I was never a Republican. I just pretended to be a Republican. That way I didn't get any hate.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then the more digging I went through, I was like saying, I came up with like, why is country music so patriotic out of nowhere? Why is this a thing? So I started doing questions. And that was my first episode that I wanted to do. Why country music was very patriotic. Every time someone talks about country, they talk about Johnny Cash or all that fun stuff. But nowadays, all you hear is about trucks, girls, beer, and then throw the American flag waving in the background.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then the more I did, I realized, wow, why did we talk about the welfare queen? Where that came from? Which that was my favorite episode because the more I dig into it, I realized, cool, welfare queen is just another way of saying the N-word.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
So
is Karen's and
exactly
those slander things. I think you've got a good point, and if you look at the time frame, right? Because I was born in '74, and all my parents listened to was really old country. I mean, growing up, one of my favorite singers was George Jones, and the songs that they sang were more about their life experiences. George did sing a lot of songs about alcohol, but he was also an alcoholic. And I think time has changed, man, as the years has gone, and what we are doing now with throwing people's personal lives out there. It has opened up all of these doors so fast. If we did this back then, it wouldn't have been like this because there was no internet, there was no instant communication.
And it was very localized if you think about it. Like that's why a lot of people from like Midwest are very proud of that time because it was very, if you think about the United States, it was 50 different cultures going on.
Yeah.
So, and nowadays, as you point out, how we put our personal lives out there. That's why I don't do my face when I record my podcast because Oklahoma is very stingy about teachers putting their political views out there. I always have my face not showing. So, and also I don't want to have people say, well, of course he's saying this kind of thing. I just want them to hear my voice.
Yep.
But it's like country music has changed so much. I mean, every genre has, but country.
Yeah. It is no longer about how do I put it? About life experiences. Now it's about what do I got to say to you to get you to like my music.
And that's the other point too, because like, I'm not saying that I don't listen to any of the country music nowadays. Like I listen to some of the bro country because I was like, sometimes I just like to drive around and just listen to about Luke Bryan's stuff here and there. The other part that gets me is how country is not the only genre that does this, but how they affiliate themselves to that one Republican Party. Yeah. And I met a drummer from Jason Aldean a while ago, and I thought, awesome dude, a little full of himself, but when you get to that point, of course your ego is huge.
Yeah.
And I thought he was great. I thought he was an amazing drummer. I met him in South Carolina in a percussion association meeting, and it was awesome. Then he did this song. He actually was contributed with the song "Do That If You Do That in a Small Town," and that I was like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
Like money cannot defeat morals.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is wrong, no matter how much you spin it.
Yep.
It sounds wrong. It's very wrong.
It is. And, I think for me, right, it's weird because part of that change that we were talking about when I was growing up, my whole family was Democrat. But if you go back there and you look at what those views were back then, they're more the way the Republicans are today. Democrats have really kind of swapped and were like how the Republicans were back when I was growing up. And so it is weird. I that's something I've never figured out why that happened or how that happened. But what I have figured out is the only thing that is making more money than the WWE is the other wrestling association called our U.S. government. And
Of course.
it's all scripted and played out, and it is weird about when you look at all the rhetoric that's being said, right? Like 90% of what's said online is by the 20% of the people.
Or even less.
You got the 10% that's Republican and the 10% that are Democrats, and they're both on the extremes, and the 80% that are, they've got some Democrat values and they got some Republican values, and they're kind of in that middle zone. We just really don't say much.
And I agree with you in that. It's just, I think right now we're very polarized, especially with, I don't want to say the Republican Party right now. I mean, I do say a lot Republican Party currently. They're not Republicans. They're Trumpians. That's what it is.
I think Trump
Was
sells.
Yeah,
Trump sells. That's what it is.
and it's no longer even though I'd never agree with the Republican Party, I align myself more on the Democratic, very liberal side of it.
Mhm.
But I'm not saying I don't criticize the Democratic Party. I've made my views very clear of how much I dislike Hakeem Jeffries, how much I disagree with Chuck Schumer, how cowardly they are.
Yeah.
Because I believe in that everybody should be treated with dignity. And also, if you're trying to, I always say, if you always say that the country is the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, we denied healthcare to everybody to be able to have life, and we enslave them into a job.
Yeah.
That's not life. That's not liberty. That's not what the country's about. And the pursuit of happiness. Well, I'm not happy pursuing being strange to a job because I need it. I'm not pursuing the happiness that the founding fathers wanted us to do, which was like a community, like ran by a very good government, but at the same time, everybody was free to do what they believed in. If you believe in God, good. You go believe in God. You don't believe in God, good. Do your thing. You believe in Allah, go do your thing. I mean, obviously, or if you are LGBTQ, great. We are here to support that. That's because everybody's human. But somewhere along the lines, we went from Obama to getting more progressive and then 2016, boom, really right. So I think the centrist thing, not centrist, but like the idea that the Democratic Party needs to be more centrist, I don't agree with it. And here, my reasoning on that is because you end up with people like Clinton.
Yeah.
Obviously doesn't work out. You end up with Schumer, doesn't do anything. We end up with Joe Biden. I always made that he wasn't my choice. Kamala Harris wasn't my choice. However, I always use this analogy and somehow it works out. If you go to a restaurant, right, and your favorite drink is Coca-Cola or Coke or Mountain Dew, whatever it is, and then the restaurant says, well, we have two options for you. We only have Pepsi or gasoline. Of course, I'm going to go with Pepsi. I'm not going to drink gasoline. Yeah. So I always say, well, that time the Democratic Party is Pepsi and the Trump is gasoline. I don't like Pepsi as much. I have my opinions of it, but it has more in common than drinking straight up gasoline.
Well, I'm going to tell you what my opinions are, right? And I literally, when I tell people this, whether they believe me or not, I am politically homeless. I do not care about the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, the individuals that are doing it. I understand at this point in time, it's all corrupt.
For sure.
And again, even if I do agree with some of Trump's policies and the things he's doing, I'm not stupid enough to believe that he's not corrupt too, But my thoughts is would this be happening if we hadn't allowed our government to get so big? We no longer make them work for us. We work for them.
There's a counter to that. I would say I think the problem is not that the government is too big. In a sense, it's actually that we're trying to put people in power who are saying that they want less government, but they're actually pushing for more government. And what I mean by that is that currently in the past, I would say since COVID, really 2020, we've seen more involvement of federal and state government in the lives of the American people.
Yeah.
And what I mean is that like for me as a teacher, they're saying that we cannot talk about certain things, which makes no sense because the purpose of school is about critical thinking.
Yeah.
Even if it makes you uncomfortable, you don't like and we teach about facts, not just conspiracy theories.
Right.
If a student has a conspiracy theory, we'll talk about it. However, it's like we say, no, here's the facts of, and this is how I found out. I have my sources right here, and they're legitimate. So I don't think it's like the government got too big. I think it is big, but the people in power right now are saying that they want a smaller government, and it's getting smaller per se, and only one or two people are having the power to control what we can do as a country right now. So that's one thing. And I think what the government needs to do is be more, not saying huge involvement, but they need to be more like providing the ability for us to have free healthcare. That's my universal healthcare. I think everybody deserves it because I cannot believe, as one of the wealthiest countries in the world, a country that is way tinier with less money can afford that for their people, and we can afford it. Eliminate poverty. That's more government involvement. We need to do that, and better education systems, and that's government involvement.
Yep.
So
I agree with those.
So what I think is, I don't think is that we need to make the government smaller. Is the people who are voting need to be more aware of who we're voting in, and stop with the political party lines. Like, I associate with Democrat Party, but doesn't mean I vote only Democrat all the time.
Right.
Because I have voted independent, or I have voted for someone who is considered not going to win I'm going with my views, which are very liberal views.
Yep.
So
I'll be honest. Trump was not my choice for this election, and he was my choice for the last time he ran. Again, I kind of looked at it the way you did. I consider Hillary Clinton gasoline and Trump Pepsi. So I did vote there, but I also voted for Obama.
Yep.
And so I am like you in that aspect. I vote based off of what I hear and what I think is going to do the best for our country. I don't care the party. Parties are irrelevant to me.
They are. And that's a problem too. It's like we have a two-party system, and that's not working. It's obviously not working. And I think the problem is that they're sending the wrong message. If what I mean is, when we say about universal healthcare, people are saying more taxes for us. It's like, let's cut you there for a second. Maybe they might have more taxes, maybe. However, if the top 10% of the millionaires and billionaires actually are paying their fair share of taxes, we can afford all these things that we want: public transportation, better schools, better healthcare, childcare. I mean, all that stuff, we can afford it. But the messaging has been so good for the past, since Reagan, saying that if we give tax break to the top 10%, it will trickle down, which in reality, it never happened. It actually caused more poverty and the elimination of the middle class. And right now, if you're considered middle class right now, you're considered rich, which is crazy.
Well, I will tell you, I think a lot of that came from a long time ago. I think once we got rid of the gold standard and created the dollar and made it a inflationary instead of deflationary type currency, that was the beginning of their way of controlling who has the money.
Yeah. And that's other things. Like, I mean, I get it why we went from gold to dollar. I get it. It's just easier to trade with other countries. And that's what we want to do more, though, because we want to be more of a cultural export and export goods. However, we can't do any jobs here because we're not paying the fair wages to the workers. And I think any blue collar who is willing, listen, I'm not going to be the one saying that I'm going to go out there and do the 18-hour shift in the hot sun over the summer. I'm okay with my room and AC. But the people who are out there, they deserve a better livable wage with a guaranteed health care.
I agree.
Because they're doing something that I'm not willing to do, and they're not willing to, and they're doing it because they have to survive. Same thing with anybody who's working right now. Teachers need a safe environment, which involves, that could be controversial for some of us. Like, I'm a veteran, but I'm very pro gun regulation. That everybody's like, how's that possible? It's like, buddy, I know what that weapons can do. I've seen it firsthand. I don't want it around my neighborhood. I'm okay with recreational. I'm okay, or going to a shooting range and you go and put it there and leave it there. But I don't agree with someone having a stockpile of a collection, and then next thing you know, you hear on the news, it's like their son got shot and killed because they were playing with it.
Yeah, I got mixed feelings, and I'll be honest. I don't think the guns are the problem with all these mass shootings and everything else. And I'm gonna tell you why. The majority of my show is about mental health.
Yeah.
And there is a huge mental health problem in our country. And it does start with the kids. And I'm not talking about video games and stuff like that. I'm talking about that we have taught our kids to not interact with people by putting them in front of screens. And now, I was in corporate America for a while as well. I literally have had younger kids coming in for starting positions. And I asked a simple question. I asked, can you give me an example when you've seen something unsafe? What did you do? And the person told me that when they were 6, their brother stole the car and that started rolling back, and he said jump. So I waited till we got to the grass and then I jumped out. And it's not their fault. Nobody taught them how to interview.
That's true.
And nobody has taught them how to interact with people. If I conducted that interview over a chat, it would have went a lot better.
Do you think, as a question with that, you said you don't agree it's like you have mixed feelings about the gun stuff. You don't think it's mainly like a mental health. Mm-hmm. Do you think that if again, back to government, actually did a free healthcare with including mental health, and we actually spend more money on mental health and counselors in school, do you think we will see a decrease on gun violence in this country?
I think if you add in there a better protection against drugs.
Well, that too as well. But also like maybe a way that people are not suffering on poverty as much. That's an actual, I think that's the main thing as well of gun violence as well and the thing is mass shootings are the end result of rhetoric. That's one. And we've seen it for everywhere. Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech. I remember Virginia Tech. I was rough to see that. But with normal gun, I said no, normal, but like stuff that we see like robberies and stuff like that. What if we actually had an involvement with more local and federal government investing in the cities or in the communities? That way we don't have to worry about that. Like right now, trying to get rid of Social Security, that makes no sense. Why would you get rid of the the stuff that is very popular? It makes no sense. Or have something that is guaranteed that people will not be on the streets homeless, from normal people to veterans.
Yeah, there is no reason, and I agree with you. I don't care if you're a veteran, not a veteran. In a country like America, where you are nowhere near a third world country, there should never be a homeless person.
Never.
Let me ask you this, right? So Governor of California, I can't pronounce his last name, but
Newsom.
Yeah. So the Chinese leader comes to California and they shuffle all the homeless off away from where he's going to be. And he states on there that, when you have a guest come over your house, you clean house, right? Let me ask you this. If you can do that, if you can temporarily house somebody and move them away to hide them and shove them in a closet, why can't you create a system that permanently houses them?
And that's a good question too, because we've seen it as well with the alligator Alcatraz. They spent a bunch of money and they built that place in 8 days, I believe. That money could have gone to building homeless shelters as well. Now, back to the Governor Newsom, which again, I have my feelings of it. It's like he's doing a good thing about standing up to ICE, because I don't agree with the ICE raids at all. It's actually especially the masking of ICE agents, that makes no sense to anyways. But I do agree that if you have the ability, and this happens to any other country as well, when they're hosting any big event, they want to get rid of like the homeless people, the bad parts, which is the reality of the country or the place or the city. And then it makes you wonder, why can't you do that? Like not sweep them up and jail them, but if you got to sweep them up, send them to a place where they can be a homeless shelter, they get fed, and they are out there having the opportunity to get a job or something like that, they're willing to do to get their feet up or feet off the ground again.
Well, let me ask you this, right? So I do kind of agree with you in one aspect, but I also understand the realistic side of it, right? Whenever you were deployed, right? Did you mail letters back and forth?
All the time.
So when you were done reading your mail, what did you do with it? Did you throw it away or did you burn it?
We have to burn it.
And why is that?
What is it? OPSEC?
Right. Operational security, because of all of the threats that had came out that they were going to start targeting our families to make the soldiers have to go back to the States. If you created the reason for them to leave, if you killed their family, that soldier would leave the battlefield and have to go back to the States to deal with that situation and prevent that, right? Well, the situation is we're not dealing with the right situation, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, ICE is going in and targeting illegal immigrants that they say are violent criminals, right? I don't know if they are or not, unless you have access to their names and records. Nobody honestly knows. They could all be school teachers. We don't know. However, I do understand that with us not knowing who people are, it's not them that I think is the reason why they're covering their faces. I think it's because of the cartels that if they could get their faces and target their families, it now disrupts that same situation, right? If you were an ICE agent and you had to divulge your name and your face to people that are coming from countries that are ran by cartels, the government does not run Mexico on down, there's a lot of corruptness and it's all ran by very powerful rich people and that we have made rich. And you go back and you look at the situations where the CIA has worked with cartels and the American people are funding them by buying drugs. I just watched a documentary last night and it just blew my mind, right? It was talking about the cartels and how they have grew into a factory for meth. And, they asked how many tons of meth is moved to Los Angeles a week. And that answer was 60 tons of meth, right? It's no secret what happens to somebody's brain that's on drugs, and that's where the problem lies.
So I think my problem with the face cover up is that here's the thing, though. There's been reports that they've gone to Home Depot, schools, places churches. They've gone to churches as well and parks and stuff and where people are supposed to be safe. They're not busting anybody for drugs. And then it's like, oh, magically this person was actually a cartel member. A lot of members have been proven to be just regular. They crossed the border a long time ago, or they were DACA recipients.
Yeah.
Or in worst case scenarios, this happened. Someone looked brown and they were citizens and they got arrested because they fit the profile. And I just don't agree that an ICE agent needs to have a full military gear on to do these things. To an extent, protective plates, sure, we can talk about that because you never know what's going to happen. But some of them are dressing up like they're contractors going to Iraq. Yeah. And I'm like, you're not a contractor, buddy. You are an ICE agent, which it's been proven. Also, Stephen Miller said that he wanted 3,000 deportations. Try to get my story straight before I say this. I think it was 3,000 per month or per day. What? Now, do I agree that they are violent immigrants? Yes, they are. However, but the number of the violent immigrants that come in is way lower than the violent criminals who are American citizens.
I agree 100%.
Now, does it have to be a better immigration reform? Yes, way better. Right now, for me to get, even though my dad was an American citizen, when we moved he moved, but also that's the other part. My dad is American. He was born in Kansas and everything, but he moved to Colombia, met my mom there, and I was born there and all that. I lived there for 12 years, and then we immigrated here because he wanted to come home. That's what he said. But the process for myself and my mom, oh man, I was like it was so expensive. I think before he passed away, I found out he spent almost $40,000.
Yeah.
You telling me is that fair to any of us? No. So, and also We need to a reform on immigration. We need the workers, and a lot of immigrants just want a better life.
Yeah.
And it's proven in other countries, in Europe and others, what we call first world countries, they have a process that's cheaper. And yes, they do have a harsher way of assimilation. However, they give you time. In the 5 years that you have to be there for become a citizen of certain country, the government gives you free classes to learn the language and history of the country.
Yeah.
They can do it. We can do it here. We are forcing these immigrants to learn English and the history out of nowhere. So
well, I do agree that the reform needs to be done. And this part that Trump came out, and I ain't going to talk a whole lot about it because I don't fully understand it. But this $5 million gold card, that is insane.
It's corrupt.
Well, why would somebody that has enough money to pay $5 million need to worry about becoming a U.S. citizen?
That's the part that I don't understand either. And I think that's a very corrupt thing to do, especially when you put your name and say the Trump gold card for citizenship. You are inviting oligarchs is what you're doing. You're not inviting the scientists. You're not inviting the engineers or the new teachers who want to be here in America or the farm workers. You're just inviting the people who have enough money to just open a business here, I guess, and take our business away.
Well, not just that, but again.
Also, where's that money going to? He's saying that he's going to the government, but I don't believe it.
No, I don't believe half our money is done. And that's my biggest problem, right? Is we say this is the land of the free and the place of dreams, right? But the moment that you start a business, you instantly start giving up 30% of what your profits to the government, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have to pay all of your taxes, 100% of it, and you have to pay half of your employees' taxes. And at the end of the day, how does a small business start with that?
Nothing. Can't. And that's not. And I think. And that's not just state tax. You talk about federal tax as well.
Yeah.
Because each state is different. I don't know what state. I know Oklahoma. It's a little bit easier to start a business, but it's still brutal.
It is.
And I do agree that if the people who have the ability to pay for billions and billions of dollars of their corporations, they should be the ones getting taxed the most because they're big. They're going to make revenue no matter what you do. Apple's going to make billions of dollars no matter what. I mean, all of us have some form of Apple stuff now. That's ingrained into our Google will be fine. Tesla will be fine. All these companies that are worth billions, they need to be more paying their fair share, while the people who are trying to start a business, a mom and pop shop, we need to give them a break. They're the ones who really need a break, because to start a business and you're already starting $5,000 in the hole, and that's just being nice. How maybe they're starting $50,000 in the hole, and then they go bankrupt, and that goes on their history, and they can't do anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just spent $1,300 in filing fees for my business.
It's ridiculous.
That's for documents, person that has zero risk. There's no risk for the government. If I go bankrupt, that doesn't affect the government one bit.
No, not at all.
They're not going to give me anything to help me. They're not going to pay part of the overhead of the business. They're not invested in the business, but they're going to take money to overregulate industries. And
I think,
And the frustrating part about that, I owned a trucking company for 6 years. And you're talking about the most overly regulated money grab that's out there. If I had a truck and I was overweight by 10,000 pounds, right? The government says that is unsafe. The roads are not designed for that. You cause damage and everything else. But if I spend $14 for a piece of paper for an overweight permit, now it's safe.
That's funny you mentioned that, because what the hypocrisy. It's because, first of all, they're admitting that our infrastructure is not safe enough
if you're over 80,000 pounds,
but pay $14 and then we'll just let it slide.
Yeah.
That brings another layer of problems right here. Like, the infrastructure issues in this country are amazing. And if you ever decide to come to Oklahoma, you will notice as soon as you cross that border of the state line, you go from maybe a nice road from Texas or Kansas or whatever state you coming from, it goes from nice and smooth to potholes everywhere. Yeah. And I mean, it is bad in here. Like the amount of I've seen people lose wheels because of the potholes in the state, and the tax money that we are paying for doesn't go to the roads at all. Maybe if they do, it's a very but yeah, and it's ridiculous. Like if you're gonna complain and find the people who have a business about having too much weight on their truck, but and because of infrastructure, but you're not going to fix the infrastructure, penalize the small business. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, and that's another reason why I closed it. It was because I just couldn't compete. And
oh man, it's
and
ridiculous.
A lot of this, and this is where a lot of people don't understand. A lot of this stuff comes from the government because they're paid to do it, right?
Yeah.
People like Schneider, General Motors, Ford, they're the ones that lobby for all these high EPA regulations and everything else because they know that it pushes out the smaller competition.
Of course.
Why do you think Schneider can afford to buy new trucks every 3 years? Because they sell their old trucks to their drivers. The drivers are stuck with the repairs. They lobby for these stringent regulations that the manufacturers, Peterbilt and Mack, have to deal with. And then they just buy the trucks at a discount because they buy them in lump sum, and nobody can compete with that.
And that brings me to another, like, I don't know if you ever watched a show called Last Week Tonight by John Oliver.
I have not.
He wrote it's on HBO Max. So if you have it, or you can watch that particular episode on YouTube, but he talked about the trucking industry right now. And they talk about this main couple who are truck drivers. And they talked about how if they make $50,000 a year, they spend 60 to 70,000 on repairs alone of the truck and maintenance. Something like that. So, and the trucking companies, the big ones are like, okay, that's your problem.
My best years, I grossed 240,000, I think was the best year I ever had. Right.
Wow, that's really nice.
And my taxable income after all my deductions was $70,000.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So that's the point that we're trying to say. It's like people like saying that people are not paying their taxes. People are. It's just it's the wrong people. And then it's just a crazy part. I think this could depend. Like there's the way that people are thinking that's wrong. The Republican Party is amazing at the messaging of the taxes. They're saying that if you make $1 million everybody, if you make this much money, you're going to be taxed 60%, which is not true. The reality is if you make, I don't know if there's a 500 or $1 million, every dollar after the $1 million is 60% taxable.
Right.
Which all that money you already made your revenue. Now you're still going to make a lot of revenues, just that now you're going to have a fair share to pay for us, the country, pay back the issue. And while businesses who make 200 on average or less have to pay, 70, you got 70,000 back or total out of 240. We're talking about 40%, not even 30% back.
Yeah. It's
ridiculous. That shouldn't be a thing. That should not be the way that a business can work. Never, especially a small business.
Well, and then the scary part about this, I don't know. I personally would have no desire to go and try to open up a small restaurant, cafe, anything like that after what I've seen with COVID, where the government had the power to say, nope, you're closing your doors. I don't care if you don't have any money coming in.
See, that the part right there was, I understood both sides of the the argument. COVID was something that we didn't know what was going on. Now we know how to fight it. But at the time, it was a new thing, a new virus. And because our bodies have been used to that kind of, or there was no vaccine or nothing, well, of course, people were going to die more often. So we would try to limit the contact between everybody. And let me tell you, I was in my last year of college. No. My junior year of college when that happened. It was great at times because I didn't want to do anything at the practice room anymore. I was tired practicing almost 14 hours or a total of 40 hours per week, practicing on top of that, doing my homework for college and exams and all that. But I did see how the government did not help these people.
No. If the law stated that you had to pay for the lost revenue for every day that business closed, and in return, that business could not fire anybody. They had to maintain their staff, pay their staff their regular wages, but the government paid for it all.
I think
it would have closed it.
Say that one more time.
the government would have closed the businesses, or do you think they would have found a way that they could do it safely?
I don't know. That's a tough one. So you're saying the government paid for that? That will not make them close?
I'm saying if the law said, if we force you to close your business, you are not allowed to fire anybody, and we are going to pay your average income, right? Not total what you make, you're not your best years, your last 6 months, whatever you made, that is what the government's going to pay that business, right? And in return, you have to maintain your staff, and everybody has to have your jobs, but you have to follow our regulations. Had they done that, I don't think any business would have had any issues.
No, that's the thing though. Like if the state or the federal government would have actually used the money they have to help these businesses to maintain business
for years, they take 30% from them.
Yeah, we would not have seen that big dip on the not just the markets but economy wise, and the inflation would not have been as bad as it was. Like, so I agree. If that's the thing, I don't remember ever seeing that, because I don't think they did it. They just sent everybody like a little check.
They gave you
$1,000 check or something like that.
They did do stimuluses for everybody, and there was a program called the PPE.
Those
a business could apply for up to 2 times, right? But all they give you is 2 months.
No, they didn't give you enough.
They give you 2 months salary times the number of employees you have. And that's what they gave you. And you were not allowed to fire him, but you had to maintain your staff.
And that was the part. The PPE was another issue too, because a lot of businesses donated an extension.
Yeah.
And the people that voted against the extension were the ones who were getting the most money out of the PPE, or even more time for it. And those were like Lauren Boebert, TG. They were Matt Gates, I believe so. They got a lot of money out of PPE.
Oh, yeah.
They're the ones voting against their own constituents who have a business, who have to close down business. Because at the end, they were like, you got your vote. I don't care about you. Move along.
What do you think about
Let me talk about Jewish space lasers again. Stuff like that.
If I owned a massive, if I was Apple, right? And there was a whole bunch of littler companies that was in the same industry, and the government does something like this, it opens up a hell of an opportunity for a major company to buy out these littler companies at a discount, because their choices now are either bankrupt or sell.
Monopoly.
Yeah.
And that's the problem though. Like we have laws against it. Sorry, my cat probably opened the door.
Oh, you're good. So let me ask you this too, right? While we're on this topic, right? If a company is doing bad, they have to tighten their belts, right? Maybe lay off some people or cut back on the amount of product that they're keeping in inventory or whatever, right? They have to watch their expenditures. So in this situation where the government, makes everybody close, and they don't offer to pay the salaries of the employees that they're telling the businesses you have to maintain if you want any help from us, well, wouldn't you think that the government now, who's not getting any tax income, should have to tighten their belts and watch their expenditures?
Yes.
Instead, we vote for the taxpayers to pay billions and billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid to all these other countries. And not one penny goes to offering a program to make it sustainable for that little country cafe that is owned by John and Rick Joe. You know?
Right now, the money as well is not being spent wisely. Like right now, after we passed the big, beautiful bill, gosh, I hate that name so much. They're adding $3 trillion to the debt. I mean, I remember 2008 was like, everybody was talking about how Obama was going to kill us with the debt, and they had a debt clock in New York City at Wall Street, and now the same people are like, oh, the debt, no issue. So I think also the money's not going to the right taxpayer money. It's not going to the right places, because right now I think it's like $898 billion in the defense budget, which, by the way, that is not going to the actual military members at all. That's and I'm pretty sure you know this. Is that
major contractors?
Yeah, exactly. It's gone to Raytheon, Boeing, all that, and paying off the foreign aid as well. Yeah, and so in reality, maybe 10% goes to the military and the VA.
Well, if these big budgets and everything went to our troops, why did we have to start the war without up armored vehicles? Because I remember when the war first started, I was out there welding anything I could find. If we found an abandoned vehicle, we was taking fenders off, doors off, and everything, and welding them onto the side of Humvees to make armor in hopes that it would be enough. Lining the bottoms of the floors with sandbags, you know.
And I always heard this in the Marine Corps is that we do more with less. When I remember when I first got my first set of SAPI plates, they told me this is the only pair you get, so don't drop them because they'll crack and you'll be done. And I was like, cool, my life is worth nothing to you guys. That's great. And then they're like, well, we just don't have the money to buy new SAPI plates. Yeah. I was like, that's crazy that we don't have money. How much money do we make a year, guys? Like, come on. But my favorite story is always when there was a federal shutdown going on. Everybody in the military was like, so does this mean we go to work at all? And everybody says like, yeah, you still show up to work. What are you talking about? I was like, well, we're federal employees. We don't get money. They're like, no, you still show up. I was like, cool. So it doesn't matter what happens. We have no rights. And they're like, yep, correct. I was like,
in the Army, they always say, you know, we defend democracy. We do not practice it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You guys are part of it. We defend democracy, but this right here is a dictatorship.
Yep.
The amount of time I heard that. And so when you bring that up too with the budget and stuff, I go back to my military service and I think about it, and you probably have seen this, is like a lot of people in the military stay in the military not because they want to, but because they have to, because maybe they have free healthcare because of TRICARE. Yes, it is taxed, but it's not crazy. But then the families that marry the next of kin or they're married with their wife and kids, they get enrolled in TRICARE and they don't have to worry about healthcare.
Yeah.
And then the wife and son can do help. I've seen more military wives helping in the base, on base, like with family advocacies, sometimes even for free because they don't have to worry about a paycheck or healthcare.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But it was crazy to see that a lot of my fellow veterans or Marine guys were voting for people who to outside the military not to have these kind of benefits. And that brings me back to, it's like, okay, but we have the money. And they always brought the talking points of, well, I don't want to pay more taxes. And I go, buddy, you're already paying taxes for this. It's just the problem is once you get out of this, you're still going to be paying the taxes, but you're not going to get the benefits.
Yeah, that's what people don't understand. And that's what I meant earlier when I said I think the government's too big. Because right now, if you say, okay, I don't want that, it's not like you saying I don't want that, so I don't have to pay taxes on that. They're going to find another place for that additional tax to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's just going to be another regulation, another department, something, right? And so it's not like you're going to get out of paying additional taxes. It's just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I just think like for a society for a country, society, culture to sustain itself, taxes are part of life. That's how a government works at the end. Because if we don't have taxes paying for it, you don't have the stuff that we want.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, it's just like taxes are part of life. And, you know, when people say like my dad used to be a fanatic of Fox News and I mean, my God, but he will email me this and that tells you the age range already. It's like he will email me stuff like the memes and stuff saying they will tax you your tears. They will tax your when you're taking a shit. I was like, where's this coming from? It's like, I love you, Dad, but what is this? This makes no sense.
Well, you do think about it, though. I do agree in one aspect. I do agree that we should have to pay taxes. I do not believe that our troops, our active duty soldiers, I think they should be tax exempt. And the reason why I say that is because it is a crying shame that an E4, E5 in the military still qualifies for food stamps.
That's the worst part, too.
And so I understand that, you know, if we give that an employee group of that size more money, right, it's going to create a deficit. However, they're 1% of the population. And if you made them tax exempt for state and federal taxes, wouldn't that be the same as them getting a raise?
Big time.
So you can't tell me that if 1% of the population stop paying taxes, I'm not even talking about veterans. I'm just talking about active duty people, right? If you get a check from your reserves for the weekend or your active duty and it comes from the Department of Defense, I think at that point it should be tax exempt. And it would be a pretty significant raise.
And I think if you did that with the income tax for the not federal employees, but the military, active duty, and that, you would see an increase of actual recruitment in a sense. I do agree with that part because the starting salary for E1 is not great.
Nope.
I think when I started, it was 1,500, I believe, in 2013.
Yep.
Which at the time when I was heading to high school, was like, oh, I'm getting 1,500 each every 2 weeks. That's great.
Yep.
Then you go to boot camp and then you see your first pay stub and it's like, holy crap! They deducted me $500 for uniforms.
Yeah.
How this? I was like, I only got like $300 in my name. I was like, guys, come on. So, yeah, I mean, taxes is part of it. However, there has to be a reform of how we tax people. And I do think the more money you make, like wave the top 5%, they should be getting taxed. I don't agree that it should be billionaires. It's like, that's way too much money to have in your life. Even someone actually broke down the calculations. If Elon spent $1 million a day of what his wealth is starting right now, he will die. It will take, I think, 90 years before that money finally runs out or something like that. It will take generations. So what are you doing? Why don't you donate money? Give it to actually people who need it.
Yeah.
Or like Texas right now, they really need it.
Well, I don't want to put a cap on people's ability to. I mean, Elon has done some amazing things, right? I'm not talking about Doge. I'm talking about just in his career.
I do agree. Tesla, it was started strong.
It did. I mean, it almost went bankrupt. I seen an interview with him. I don't remember who the YouTuber was that did the interview, but Elon said that SpaceX, right? He had enough money to fund it for, I think he said 3 trips, and the first 2 failed. They didn't make it to their destination, right? And so the 3rd trip succeeded, and he had no more money. He could not make another rocket leave the ground. And at this point, he still did not have a contract. And after the 3rd attempt, NASA called in and gave him a contract.
Yeah, and the other thing is like what I mean by a cap. I don't mean like I don't agree that billionaires should be a thing or trillionaires because that's how we end up with actual corruption. But I do, yes, I see what you mean by like the cap. Doesn't mean I'm saying okay, you're a billionaire. That means we're gonna take all this money away from you. However, right. I do think that again it goes back. I'm going back in circles with this. It's like you make this much money, we need to take that tax and start putting it to the people because you're making way too much money. You're hoarding it. And if you really are a business person that wants to expand your business, well, the government will help you start expanding your business by providing you with contracts that will help expand your stuff. Yep. However, with Elon, it's just, his Tesla thing was a great idea. Or not him personally, but I see what he wanted to do. But he's just like any other millionaire or billionaire. He's just going with whoever will give him the attention and the money. The grifter is what he is. And I don't like him at all anymore. I never liked him in the first place, but I think EVs are needed at this point. I think they're efficient. I drive a truck, which is kind of funny to say out loud, but I've driven a Tesla and I like them. I've driven any electric cars. I love them. They're great.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tesla's like the thing about Tesla though, and my in-laws have a Tesla, and they took me, my wife, and myself on a spin, and my father-in-law was so funny. He said, "Let's test this out." Like I almost had whiplash. I was like, "That is wild." Yeah. And every EV has a strong G-force now. But I think like the other thing with money is like I do think if you're a billionaire, why aren't you spending more money on education, guys?
So I think the bigger problem isn't so much the billionaires and what they're making, right? I think the bigger problem is that once a family makes this money, every generation after that will have opportunities that are not available to everybody else. And I think if everybody else had the same opportunities from the get-go and you were able to choose your path, and some make it and some don't, well, at least you had the opportunity, right? But when you say kids have to go to this school because they live in this district and you don't make it available for them to go to any school that they want to go to, if you make it to where, prestigious colleges are so unaffordable.
Oh,
They're not everybody.
I think now college is unaffordable.
It is.
I think like tuition at OU was $17,000 per semester.
Yeah, and the return on investment right now, especially if you have a business degree, is useless.
It's just the same. And the other thing is though, it's like, so you talk about like the choice to go to other school. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying, if I lived in, let's say, Compton, right? And the school that's in my district is not living up to standards. If I have a way to get to another school that's across the city and the academic abilities of that school is much better, as a parent, I should have the right to say, you know what, I am willing to drive my kid to school every day to take him to that school that is increasing the likelihood that my child's going to go to college, or my child's going to graduate, or my child's just going to be safe while they're there.
Yeah. Well, but that's a good segue too, because now we're talking about education here. You're enter my specialty here.
Yeah.
So I did teach at Title I school. If anybody knows, Title I means that they get the most help technically from federal government, but it's also because a lot of our kids are in our 90% poverty. Like the free food they get is the only meal they might eat there.
Yeah.
Which is breakfast and lunch, and sometimes they don't even eat dinner at all. And that's the thing. Now, the problem I have with school voucher and school choice is the wording of it. As a parent, yes, I do agree that I want the best for my kid.
Yep.
I mean, he's only one right now. The only thing that he knows about is running around and destroying my house. But that's just but I do agree that some schools are not up to par. But here's why though. Property tax goes to the school.
Yep.
And a lot of neighborhoods in the suburban area have a higher property tax, and they can afford that. Or while the cities, they don't have the high property tax because the property tax, majority of the people who live in the city rent. They don't own that place. So the property tax of an apartment complex or the house, it's not going to the district, to the city district. It's going to whoever owns the house.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that makes sense.
So a lot of that, what's going on in Oklahoma is that I work with Oklahoma City Public Schools. Love the kids, love the school that I used to be, but there was a challenge. I saw a lot of kids coming in hungry all the time. I became a psychologist. I see stories that I wasn't prepared to listen to about, like the amount of stories about abuse, alcoholism from parents, drug use, or not even just that, not just the bad, but I'm the only one at home right now because mom and dad are working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And it's hard to sell that to the kids to say, well, you need an education to get out of that situation when they need to survive. So what I want to talk to my local and my state government is that we need to get rid of property tax going to just the district and actually paying property tax, and that money going to the schools that need it the most. But I know I'm going to get flack about that because it's like, well, why am I paying tax to a school that my kid doesn't go to? Well, here's the other thing. We're paying taxes for the military. Is your kid in the military? No, it's just a benefit, or it's something that we have to do. So if you want a more choice for your kid to go to a different school without having the issue, I think then we need to make sure that we distribute the tax money, the property tax money, to the places that need it, not just the ones that are getting more and more and more and more, because a lot of them already have the money. And what I mean by that, there's some schools here in Oklahoma that already have, I think they are having build 3 different freshman academy buildings, but they don't have enough kids for that. Why you need this?
I know you look at the Midwest, and I'm sure you can vouch for this. Some of these schools, their football fields look like college stadiums.
Oh, yeah. The school I work at now, the stadium is beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the oldest. I mean, Steve Largent went there. If anybody's that gives you an idea. So it's Putnam City High School. That's where he went. That's where I work, and I see the beautiful buildings like they're building and stuff. And I'm not saying the neighborhood is bad. It's okay. It's nothing bad. However, the school I used to work at, they made sure to. It's almost like a redlining for school. And what I mean is that the school I was next to the highway. However, north of that of the school, it was beautiful neighborhoods. I mean, I was jealous. I was like, oh, I could have moved to that house. It's really nice. None of those kids go to our school.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids that come to a school came south or east, and that was where it was apartment complexes, Section 8, and all that stuff. Poverty. The kids who were north of that street of the school, they were going to Edmond Public Schools, which is in this area. Edmond is super rich.
Yeah.
So a lot of that money was going to those schools. And I mean, nothing against the band directors there, nothing against any teacher. They're not at fault for the issues of the schools. But the amount of money that some of these schools are spending, not just in sports, but for amenities, it's ridiculous. Then they cut off vocational tech. That's my other part that I disagree with a lot. We do have vocational tech in our schools, but they're not through the high school themselves. They're through a third party, and they have to go bust them everywhere. I remember in my high school in Kansas, we had vocational tech in high school. There was welding, car, all that stuff. Why can't we do that here? We agree that college is not for everybody, and it shouldn't be. But if you want to do welding, electrician, the school should be providing that, but we don't. Because we have standardized testing, that we spend so much more time on standardized testing. I think these kids take on average 170 tests from 6th grade to high school.
Well, I'm going to tell you how you can sell the distributing the funding better. If you can get them to approve allowing kids to be able to pick whatever school they want to go to, and then settle for, well, okay, we won't do that if we can make it to where the funds are distributed based off of the need of the school, so that we don't have to allow kids to go to any school. All schools are built and created with the same opportunities. As a wealthy person, I'd be smart enough to know that I would much rather pay money to go to another school than to have the teacher to student ratio of the school that my kid's at 50-60 to 1.
And that's becoming the norm.
Yeah. And the education is not going to be at that,
And it's proven, it's statistically proven that for a education system, a classroom for a kid to get the most, you need a max of 15 kids per class. That's it. And sometimes 15 and 2 instructors. And I don't think any parent will disagree with me saying that teachers do need to get paid higher. It's a job that is stressful right now, especially with all the craziness going on. Because if my starting salary is barely enough to pay bills, that's not a job that anybody wants to do. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm struggling with bills and stuff. The military did wonders with me about business and stuff like that. So it was amazing. However, not everybody's lucky.
Yeah.
And I think the other part is that maybe we need to start asking colleges the tuition fee. Mm-hmm. This should be the starting salary of that job. And what I mean by that is that if my opening salary for Oklahoma for teacher is $46,000, my full tuition should be $46,000 for the 4 years. That way I don't go in debt. And that way you will see a higher number of educators because they're not going in debt in college already, and they'll be fine in a sense. The other caveat to that is that they will see that, and then those schools will start pushing for higher wages. That way the colleges can get more money.
Yeah.
But it's just how it is. But I do think like right now is very top heavy. What I mean by top heavy is that superintendents and their boards get paid very well. I get superintendent jobs can be stressful because you're not just dealing with the school, you're dealing with the whole district. However, when the superintendent makes $300,000 a year, while a teacher is barely making it, and they're board members. And I'm not talking, the superintendent has to answer to the board, and each board member is making $250,000 a year or more. Then the problem is not the teachers. The problem is the higher ups. And right now they're cutting funding again and again and again. Right now we have up-to-date textbooks. Good luck trying to get Wi-Fi in the schools anymore. Copy machines, they're down to one copy machine for the whole school. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You think about that, what you just said. If at the end of the day you have a superintendent that's in charge of a district making $200,000 or $300,000, he's making $50,000 more than the president of the United States.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is insane.
It's like, and also like the other part that's crazy to me is that this is not out of the blue, but like, or not abnormal that the highest public paid employee is a football coach for a college.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we're paying for that contract. They're living just fine. And I get it. Being a football coach at the college and pro levels is not easy. But when the teachers who are in the trenches with these kids all the time, and nurses and doctors and all that stuff barely making it because of the privatization of education, then we have a problem. And it's not a problem against, and the narrative is that the teachers are trying to indoctrinate. Buddy, if I could indoctrinate kids, I will make sure they turn in their homework. That's the only thing I want to teach my job, do my band stuff, make sure they're okay, and go and come back home.
Yeah.
I'm not here trying to push any political agenda. I don't have time for that. I don't have energy. It's like, if I could, no, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. But the narrative in Oklahoma right now is our superintendent, our Secretary of Education, Ryan Walters, was pushing for state tax money to go to a private Catholic school. That right there, and the Supreme Court said no. Finally, they say something correct that I agree on. But the moment if they were approved, that opens a whole problem, because now we're saying, so religious private schools are okay now. Yeah. There's no separation of church and state anymore.
Yeah.
With that. And that right there is indoctrinating one religion to public education. What happened to freedom of speech? What happened to freedom of religion? That's what public schools are for. Public schools are there for everybody, not for just the few. That's why I don't like whenever we have Christian groups coming to a public school and doing preachy stuff during kids' time, because that should be a form of indoctrination. I always say to the principal, I said, are you okay with the Christian group coming in every Tuesday and Thursday to preach about Jesus and stuff? And she's like, yes. Okay, cool. Okay, what if I bring the I don't know what the version of a preacher for Muslim Islam is, but I forgot that. But what if I bring them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Will you be okay with that? And the answer is always, well, that's different. No. How is it different?
Yeah.
You're allowing one religion, but you're not allowing the other ones. What's the problem here?
Yep. That's what happened when the Catholics were killing each other.
Yeah, exactly. So with education in Oklahoma right now, I understand I'm at a very super red state. I get it. But I think, and I've seen parents pull out their kids out of school because we don't pray in the mornings. And I try to explain to the parent, I said, okay, well, there's this thing called separation of church and state, that we cannot preface one specific religion, because the founding father says, I have the freedom to do my religion the way I want it, and no public institution shall infringe on that right. So if you have an issue with us not having prayer each morning, then there's multiple private schools that you can send your kid to. Fine, I get it. I went to a Catholic school, hated it, because I found the hypocrisy in Catholic schools very amazing and all that. But the other part is the money that we spend on these. I'm trying to think. We're spending more money on amenities right now than we're spending on the kids themselves. That's the end result of the problem. And we are 49th in education for a reason.
Yep.
Because we're not investing on teachers. Teachers don't want to come. Qualified teachers don't want to come to the state. And I'm a standard of what we call, there's 3 levels of a certification here in Oklahoma. We have the standard, we have the alternate, and emergency. I think I'm not 100% on this one, but I believe about half of the teachers right now in Oklahoma are emergency teachers. Emergency, I mean, they didn't go to school for become a teacher. They maybe have a business degree, so they put them into a math class or something like that, or they teach social studies or something like that. They're emergency certified. They had to renew it every year, but that tells you, but you really think the guy who went to a high level of U.S. history or how the government works? No. Then you have the alternate. Those are people who went to school for art or they went to school for math, but they weren't going for teaching. Well, all they have to do is finish some education classes, then they're alternate certified. Yeah. Then you have me. I went to school to become a teacher. I went through all the classes. I did my 4-year program. I took all the tests. I did everything before I finished my 4 years of college. Then that's called standard. Now that's rare. You don't see those anymore around. Like maybe it's like 1 out of 20 teachers are standard certified.
Wow.
And that's the problem we have, is that we're losing really good teachers. And I don't blame them. Like I consider quitting because we have parents who are very aggressive to the kids, or I mean to the teachers. We have kids who don't want to listen, and that's normal. I mean, they're teenagers. Every generation had their problems of teenagers. It's not just this generation. But the problem is that we have taken away the teacher authority to instill discipline and education, because right now it's because of school choice, or I want to know everything my kid is doing because I think the liberals are taking over. And I'm like, I didn't know George Washington was liberal all of a sudden. I didn't know that teaching that slavery was a thing was a liberal concept. What was going on here? What are we doing here?
I just did a podcast with a author who came up with one of the most brilliant ideas I've ever seen. Now, obviously, it's a fictional story, right? Mm-hmm. But it's called The Third Term, and it brings back George Washington to run against Donald Trump in 2028.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Oh, I'm telling you, I got scared because I was like, can you imagine if we amended and rewrote the Constitution of the United States today?
That's the scary part too, because like, what if we amend it? I mean, everybody's gonna say, well, didn't FDR had 3 terms? It's like, well, yeah, that was before we amended the Constitution, and also this was wartime, so I think during wartime we have some levity of how many terms like president can have. However, I know it's scary, like to think about that. If we amend the Constitution for someone to have a 3rd term, what's going to stop them from going for 4, 5 lifetime? Who says that they're not going to pass it down to their kids? Wow, look at that. We're talking about monarchy.
Yep. Well, brother, I'm gonna bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can find your podcast and dive into some more awesome conversations. Like,
sir, so they can find me anywhere they get the podcast. It's titled The Problem with 3 dots. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, anywhere you find your podcast. We have 3 sections. I deal with 3 sections. I deal with the myth, like the lies we tell. That's where I divulge like myths that we have believed, but they're lies, like the welfare queen or the universal health care and all that stuff. Then I do series called The Problem With, and I delve into white collar crime or American War Machine or anything like that. Then I do an off the record, which I talk about the current news going on. Like I just spent 1 hour talking about the problem with the sad reality of the Texas flood and how the cutting of NOAA, National Weather Service, led up to that. So they can find me there, and and they can listen to my beautiful voice again.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to throw the exit video out. I appreciate, if you don't mind hanging on afterwards, we'll chit chat for a few minutes, but I appreciate you coming on. You know, I hope people take from this video that, you know, as humans, we don't all agree 100% on everything, but you can still have amazing conversations and learn things from other people, whether you agree or disagree.
You can find a common ground.
Yep. And you can find a common ground. It doesn't have to be a end with I'm going to unfriend you, as the new generation likes to say.
Or I'm not talking to my parents ever again.
Yep, absolutely. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. We will see you next time.